Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back here to today's episode of Intuitive Angling, and thanks a million for checking out today's video and spending some of your day with me. And guys, today I want to have a little conversation about how the younger generation of bass anglers, and this is not their fault, but basically they don't know how to fish jigs. It's like the technique of jig fishing is sort of getting to be a lost art. And one of the things about jigs, a lot of people don't understand, is they are probably one of the top two most difficult techniques in bass fishing to master. I put jerkbait fishing and jig fishing as the first and second hardest techniques to master because of the amount of variables to it. You have so many different like profile and color considerations and actions and skirt colors and jig heads and jig weights and trailer combinations that you have with it. Same with the jerkbaits. You got cadence of retrieve, jerkbait profile, the line size, how much you pull on it, casting distances. There is an endless amount of variables to jig fishing and jerkbaits. And another thing about that is you have to impart action on both of those lures. It takes a little bit of skill. So jig fishing is something that you just can't start, one day and get good the same day. It takes a long time to master jig fishing. And from what I've seen about it, the younger generation of anglers, the ones that have been brought up on the forward-facing minnows and that type of stuff, they don't know how to fish jigs. And I want to talk about that a little bit in today's video and sort of maybe give them some advice and tips on how to master jig fishing. And also, guys, speaking of jig fishing, we'll be talking about my signature jigs, guys. I got my Blaukat Throwback jig from Cumberland Pro Lures we're going to talk about, and my Blaukat Power Finesse Throwback jig from Cumberland Pro Lures. I'll link both of these. You can get them at Tackle Warehouse, and my Tackle Warehouse link in the description. These are both living rubber jigs, guys, and that's one of the things about a jig master is they use living rubber. They don't use silicone for the most part. Silicone is not the best jig skirt you can use. Living rubber gets you more bites. It gets bigger bites, and it's just the way to go. So I'll have those linked in the description. And also, guys, thank you very much for everybody that's taken time to hit that subscribe button here at Intuitive Angling. If you like the content here, you get something out of it, it's helping you catch a fish or two. Best thing you can do, it's free and easy to hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, comment on the video, share the videos, because that's what causes YouTube to push the videos out there. And the more people are doing that, the higher number of views the videos get. So thank you very much if you're subscribing to the channel there. Okay, guys, let me talk a little bit about the younger anglers not getting into it. I have a chance to talk to and even fish with a lot of younger anglers, just throughout the course of, my social media and my Facebook and co-anglers and, the on the water lessons I do. So I'm around a lot of younger anglers, anywhere between 15 to 25 years old. And one of the things I will say about younger anglers is most of them are really good casters. And that's a big deal. It's like to be a caster, that is a large part of your success about bass anglers. And I've noticed that younger anglers are better casters than they were in my generation, but they are very weak at jig fishing simply because they haven't been taught about it. They don't know much about it. They haven't got the on the water time with it. And one of the things that they are weak about is they don't understand the nuances of jig fishing, because jig fishing, I'm going to give you guys some tips and advice on jigs, and I'm also going to talk to why some of the younger anglers aren't doing very good with it. Is one of the big nuances in jig fishing is you have to be able to match a bunch of different variables together to make it work. In other words, you have to match your skirt color and your trailer color in correlation with the water visibility and the water temperature. And this is something that takes a lot of years to identify what that is, because when you're talking about water clarity, we're talking about jig fishing in anywhere between 4 inches of visibility up to 20 foot of visibility. Jigs will literally work in every water clarity available that's in any lake across the country. Jigs not only work in every water temperature across the country, they work 12 months out of the year, but their effectiveness is dictated by your ability to match the trailer color and the skirt color in correlation with those external variables, along with the head size. So like with the throwback jig, guys, we have 3 or 4 different sizes with them, and the size of jig that you use is how you determine that is again another conversation. It has to do with the water visibility, the water clarity, the type of cover that you're fishing, how deep the cover that you're fishing is, how thick the cover you're fishing is. So in order to get good at jig fishing, and this is why a lot of younger anglers struggle with it because they don't have the dirt time on the water, is you have to be able to mesh all of this together. You got to hit on the right skirt color in correlation with the right trailer color, in correlation with the right dye to use on your trailer, in correlation with the right size of jig head, in correlation with the right line size, because based upon your line size that you're fishing, your jig falls differently. And then finally, based upon the action that you impart upon the jig, because the action that you impart upon your jig depends again on the mood and the personality of the fish, on the water clarity and the water temperature. Sometimes I'm just dragging my jig along the bottom. Sometimes I'm shaking it in one spot. Most of the time I'm hopping it hard off the bottom. But the extent of that hop, whether that bait is crawling along the bottom or hopping two or 3 inches or hopping 6 inches or hopping 2 foot, depends on those variables. And those variables change all the time with like the light intensity that you have and the wind speed, the wind direction. So the point of what I'm saying here, without getting you overwhelmed, is this is why jig fishing is so tough, and this is why young anglers struggle with it, is because you can't just pick it up in one day. It takes a lifetime of experience to learn jig fishing. And when I think about bass fishing and what I love about it, it's sort of like golf or something like that. I love to see artists and I love to see specialists. And jig fishing and jerkbait fishing are where your specialists show out a lot. That's where your talent. That's where you can showcase that true art form about when people understand, the nuances of jig fishing or jerkbait fishing that do not come with, live scope forward-facing sonar. There are no nuances with a forward-facing sonar minnow. It's like there's some slight color variations and jig head sizes, and that's about it. But in terms of jig fishing, that is what I like about it more than anything else, is it's such a complex technique, and it's such a technique that catches quality fish. There are 2 baits that are the number 1 and number 2 baits for catching quality fish, and that is a full-size jig, and that's a big spinnerbait with a big blade on it. In terms of actually getting those quality fish in the boat. Now, you may throw a big swim bait or a glide bait, and the potential there is better for a huge fish, but in the real world of how many bass that you put in the boat is very low with a big swim bait or glide bait, but it's very high in jig fishing or big spinnerbait fishing. That's why if you look back prior to the cheater box and the spotlighting, and the worst thing that ever happened to fishing is most of those tournaments in the past were won with a combination of either jig, spinnerbait, or crankbait to some extent, especially jig fishing. It's just like a jig is such an incredible bait to fish under every single condition. It's like so many other lures out there are very conditional. In other words, you have to have the right set of weather conditions for those things to excel. Not jig fishing. Fish will bite jigs in cloudy, rain, bright sun, snow, heat, 100-degree weather, 30-degree weather, 4 inches of visibility, 20 foot of visibility. I would encourage, that's one of the things I do on the channel here, if there's 2 things that I can help you out with on this channel, is go to my playlist in Intuitive Angling here and watch the jig videos and the jerkbait videos. If you spend some time just reviewing those playlists on jig and jerkbait fishing, it's going to help you out so much, because I have spent my lifetime so far, 50 years, trying to perfect jig and jerkbait fishing, and you'll know why. Once you get good at it, you'll see why it's such a, I talk about it so much on the channel here, because it's such a great way to catch them. So anyway, guys, hope it helps you catch some fish, and we'll talk later.